Geek Out! Hey, welcome to another installment of From Geek Out with Love. I'm Sam.
I'm Jake.
I'm Rich. Kumbaba.
And this week we're talking about the 1989 Bond film, License to Kill. This is the film that closes out the franchise really for like 6 years for the 80s. I mean, the entirety of the 80s, and it's the last Timothy Dalton, one of two Timothy Dalton Bond films. This has kind of been I know this holds a special place in Jake's heart.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, we watched this with Garrett, I guess about a month ago now.
Shit, really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And then I know Rich has seen it recently.
No, it was like 2 weeks ago.
Was it 2 weeks ago? No.
It was. No way.
It had to be. It had to be 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Because this past weekend I was doing shit, and it was like 3 weeks ago. It was 3 weeks ago. So
3
almost.
Weeks ago, 3 weeks. You're right. You're
That's
right.
fair. That's fair.
You're
That's
right.
fair. That's fair.
I
That's fair.
can't count.
Yeah. Also, you don't know which things are fishmen.
I mean, that's true.
But enough in jokes aside. Yeah, Jake, since this one is kind of one of your babies, one of your children, take it away.
Well, I mean,
I can see the resemblance.
Yeah. I grew up on the Sean Connery ones first, and as I got more into the genesis of Bond and the original intent with Ian Fleming's character, and then really exploring Timothy Dalton's career as a kid, the Rocketeer, and then later on Flash Gordon, and really becoming a fan of his, it only made sense that I kind of fell into the Timothy Dalton stuff, and I enjoy, how do I put this in a way? I enjoy like ultra violent, crazy fucking movies, especially when they're about revenge.
Sounds about right.
And that's pretty much this movie. I mean, it's. I would still argue. I'd be curious what you guys think, but I would still argue this is the most violent James Bond movie ever made. And I'm fascinated by like the war on drugs, and I mean, it pretty much ticks all the boxes. I mean, if they had a fucking He-Man reference in here, it'd be my favorite movie of all time. But I mean, it's really, this is Bond going rogue. I mean, Timothy Dalton really is, and we've said a million times how we kind of all see him as, the literary Bond, really, as close as it kind of gets. I guess that's an opinion. It's not obviously the be all end all, but that's how I see it at least. I mean, he's kind of the Bond that really, it's a means to an end, with the Living Daylights. We talked about how he's like, screw it, fire me if you want, I don't give a shit. And
then that happens.
Yeah, and then he goes rogue. I mean, this is a James Bond movie in the sense that it's James Bond, but he does not have the backing of MI6, really. I mean, he gets Q's help later on, which is nice. It's Q's biggest role, but it's just him. Felix Leiter and his wife are brutally, one of them's murdered and one of them's brutally mauled by a drug cartel and a young Benicio del Toro. And he goes on a one-man fucking mission. It's the Punisher, he just goes fucking nuts. And
Wrecking Crew.
And I love how kind of intense Dalton is. I mean, I feel like this is the one. I feel like this is, would you say this is the one that most people would remember him by in terms of the two? Like when you talk to other Bond people?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I know it's only two, but like, do you think most people lean more License to Kill or more Living Daylights? Because Living Daylights is much more of a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
By conventional standards.
I think this is the one that more people would be like, oh yeah, it's, Timothy Dalton was in that one because it's the one that is the most kind of recognizable. Like, yeah, Living Daylights is a Bond film. This almost isn't.
Sure.
I would agree with Garrett. I think that it also depends on the age of the individual and how big of a Bond fan they are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think if you're talking to somebody who's probably in there, who grew up with the Connery and the Moore Bond films, but they were more casual fans.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'd be able to discern between the two movies. But for people like us, I think most of us would remember License to Kill and kind of affiliate Dalton with that movie more so than The Living Daylights.
Sure. I mean, would you guys agree with me that this is probably, I mean, maybe even still the most violent James Bond movie ever made?
the one thing that stuck with me when I really got to thinking about it was it almost feels like a Bond movie that was made like 25 years too early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It hits a lot of
I agree with you completely.
Daniel Craig movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this movie helped pave the way for Daniel Craig in a huge way because I think it's also the Daniel Craig era has really helped the Dalton era a lot because I think a lot of people go back and watch that and be like, oh shit, this was happening, granted only twice. It's a really kind of a really short kind of moment in the Bond mythos, unfortunately, but I think people look back, especially this movie, and they're like, "Oh shit, this has been going on for a while now." And I think it's also it's a good way to I think like Rich was saying, I wouldn't necessarily have this be the first Bond movie somebody would watch. I wouldn't be like, "Hey, let's watch License to Kill" if you've never seen a James Bond movie. But I think this is a good.
It was one of the first two I ever saw.
It was the first Bond film I was aware of existing upon release because I'm like about to turn 3 when this movie comes out. It's also the last Bond movie released during the summer because
it gets shellacked.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the summer of 1989. That's a murderer's row of fucking blockbuster
Last
movies.
Crusade.
Yeah,
Batman
'89,
Back to the Future 2,
yeah, Lethal Weapon 2.
Yeah, all these it's a great year for There's a strong. We talk about it on the show. 1989 might be the best year.
Taylor Swift album and year.
Yes.
For movies. Excuse me. But yeah, I mean, granted, I would not say, hey, this should be your first Bond movie if I was introducing somebody. But I would say, hey, if you like this, then I'd be like, maybe you should check out the books, because
there's a lot from the books.
Yeah. And I think Daniel Craig has really helped with the Dalton era because he really takes that blunt instrument aspect of it and turns it on its head. And really goes for it.
There's also a sophistication here that you don't really see. Like Dalton pits a lot of his opponents against each other, like Milton Crest and all that, and it's almost Macbeth, the way he's kind of playing people up against each other,
which I'm sure Dalton dug.
Oh yeah, and
the entire second half of the film is doesn't work without him doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Smile for the birdie, you bastard.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from when everything hits the fan, but I mean, from when he first runs into what's his name, right up until the car chase, it's all manipulation and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of the car chase, I think one of the lasting memories I have is when I was watching the first Bond thing I ever owned was for Christmas. I asked for the VHS original first 3 James Bond movies that came in a box set. So, it was Dr. No, From Russia for Love, and Goldfinger. And I watched the hell out of those movies. I really watched the hell out of
those episodes feel ages ago.
I know they do. But yeah, I watched the hell out of those movies. And I think it was on those too, not just the DVDs, where they had the little intro for the Bond anniversary, whatever it would have been. And the 2 Dalton moments they always pick are vehicle moments. And it's in Living Daylights where they have the Aston Martin with the ski.
Yeah, guns the Aston Martin.
Yeah, and then the moment that I was like, I think this might have been where I was like, I need to know what the fuck's going on there, is when he goes on the ramp with the big freaking 18-wheeler or whatever and drives it on its fucking side, which they actually did. I mean, that's not an effect. And I was like, what the hell is that? I mean, that's just one of my favorite visuals from a Bond movie. It's so ridiculous, but it works at the same time because he crushes a car with it.
What is the most ridiculous thing in this entire film? Is it
ridiculous as in goofy?
Yeah.
Because ridiculous, there's a man gets ground by
Benicio del Toro.
Benicio del Toro gets turned into human
Academy
cocaine.
Award winner.
Yeah.
Benicio del Toro gets turned into...
Nice honeymoon.
I like whenever Benicio del Toro draws his switchblade knife. He always sticks his arm out like here it is.
Yeah, it's a fucking big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, the beginning. Let's talk about the cold open because we always kind of touch on those. I mean, the beginning's kind of insane.
Yeah.
Let's go fishing. Yeah. And Bond is when he's hey, stay here, and Bond's no, fuck you. I'm your best man.
61-year-old David Hedison as Felix Leiter.
Yeah, the Fly himself. I dig the cold open. It's fun.
Actually, it has to do with the rest of the film.
This is probably the best cold open in several movies.
I mean, it's better than Living Daylights. I mean, the stunt in the action of like in the fucking Jeep and then parachuting out of it is kind of fun. But like, yeah, I would say this is the best of the Dalton one.
Yeah. Or just look at the floor of the Florida Keys.
Yeah. I would say that. I mean,
they missed the opportunity with the parachutes, though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like we
Union Jack and the Stars and Stripes. Yeah.
Old American flag. Something that it touches on later on, which I always love when they touch on the little continuity things, is when when Bond's leaving for the night, and what's her name is gonna
Della.
Della, that's right.
Della throws the garter to him.
Yeah, and he refuses it, and she's kind of like, "What's the deal?" And Felix is like, "He was married once."
But that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I always like just little touches like that's nice, and that's something that they've been doing really since. On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I mean, each Bond has gotten that little moment, which has been nice. And Dalton, just he plays that so well. Like he plays it like he doesn't want to offend her, but like it's that moment where like he hasn't, that's always on his mind, but it's almost like he's been fucking stabbed. You know what I mean? Like he's just that's why you cast that dude. Dalton's the man. He's so freaking good. It's also the most comfortable Dalton in this movie. Like his attire. I mean, aside from fucking beat the shit out of in the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, his attire. He's like, I'm
does
fired.
He does wear a tux.
Of course he does. Yeah, he rocks the tux. But like he is living the fucking vacation / you've been fired. Pretty well. Also, we get some reckless Bond. When Sharky's killed.
Oh,
you
haven't mentioned the fucking derailing of the.
Oh, we'll get there. But like, there's the moment where when Sharky is killed and Bond, in a very Dalton Bond move, threatens his entire operation on the boat by spear gunning the guy who did it, and bringing attention to him immediately, which leads to a pretty cool little water ski. I steal a plane, throw both of the men out the window.
Well, one just straight up jumps.
One jumps, and then he has the emergency door release.
Yeah.
And that's where he gets on the money. But yes, something I think we teased last episode, which is as much as I love James Bond, especially Dalton Bond, he does inadvertently fuck up a major undercover operation that lasted years and gets most of the people killed.
All the people killed.
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone in the building, but then they all come in there like, this is. Oh, that's true. Yeah, because he's like he goes to that's the watch the birdie, you bastard. He's got the sniper rifle.
The Chinese gentleman takes cyanide. The Chinese woman gets like
she takes out a couple and then she gets just littered. With bullets. And
the Chinese man gets. There's like 4 of them.
They're all like Japanese actors playing Chinese people.
Well, there's one guy who's like he realizes he's like the smoking Brit, right? And he's like, oh, it's Her Majesty's government. Like, this is the.
He gets annihilated by the artillery.
Yeah.
The lead Chinese gentleman.
That's also the scene with Kumbaba.
Yes, it is the scene with Kumbaba. That's what Garrett was referencing. There's this build up, and this guy introduces himself, and all he says is Kumbaba.
Kumbaba. I think that's his only line in the movie. Like the only word he says, I think, is Kumbaba.
No, he gets line because Sanchez catches him trying to escape with the stingers before he somehow impales him on a forklift.
Oh yeah.
You're right.
I don't know how you do that, but you do that.
Yeah.
But
it was the 80s.
Yeah.
Stand right there. I'll be right back.
Yeah. This is coming for you. The lead Chinese gentleman, who, as Garrett pointed out, is actually a Japanese gentleman, plays Shang Tsung in the Mortal Kombat films.
Yep.
Your soul is mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bond fucks the whole thing up.
Lisa Soto.
Yes. Also from the fucking. She's what? Katana.
She's Katana in Mortal Kombat.
Ah, yes, the 90s, and she was also Vampirella. Which was the movie that effectively torpedoed her career and the comic publisher that had the rights to Vampirella at the time.
Dang.
But she does great here.
Just like how Bond torpedoed this undercover operation by going rogue and having no backing of any government whatsoever. I know the most ridiculous thing.
He's in Latin America and he fights ninjas.
Yeah. And he gets his ass kicked. I know the most Wayne...
Brady?
No. What's his face? Bless your heart. That guy.
Oh, Wayne Newton.
Yeah. He's the most ridiculous part of this movie.
Entirely
he's the
because
worst part of this movie, if you ask me.
Yeah.
It's like every time he's in there, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm watching a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was cast specifically, and the role was written specifically for him because he wanted a cameo in a James Bond movie. That's why Wayne Newton.
He got a whole fucking role rather than just
cameo.
Like, I'm Wayne Newton.
They could have had him on the TV like he was.
And that's it.
That's it. Like, okay, that's how they talk about, with the different money and cocaine size and stuff. Okay, clever with the phone number and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have this whole backstory with him.
Pam could have infiltrated the thing, the base a different
temple
way.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Not dressed up like an angel with the weird angelic light.
Yeah.
Benicio del Toro. Miss Bouvier, you dead.
Oh man, I was watching an interview with Benicio del Toro once, and I liked that he was talking about working on this movie. Like he spoke fondly of it.
And him and Robert Davi, who plays Sanchez, had a real kind of like mentor-mentee relationship over the course of filming too.
Yeah.
Also, Sanchez dresses like my grandfather. He's got like the Mr. Rogers
I think
sweaters.
He dresses like everyone's grandfather.
Yeah.
Pants up to his.
He's like the platonic form of like murderous grandpa.
Yeah.
And the speaking to the books, I think we talked, in Live and Let Die, the book, Felix is fed to the sharks, so to speak, and we get to see that happen in this movie in terms of movie form. So yay for Felix Leiter.
Also,
and then at the end of the movie, he's like all smiles and laughing and shit. It's like, dude, your wife is dead, and like you have no legs, and you're just like, good job, James.
Yeah.
I hear that M has a job for you.
Yeah.
Just chilling in the hospital until James comes to bring him just flowers.
Yeah.
And all will be fine.
Just like hanging out there. I always kind of like my log line for this film is basically it's James Bond versus Scarface.
Yeah.
And James Bond wins.
Oh, James Bond wins big time.
Here's the thing. I don't actually like the movie Scarface. Like, I like some moments, mostly like when Pacino goes whole hog, but I don't really like Scarface.
No, same.
What are your guys' thoughts on Scarface?
To quote Dave Chappelle, I'd love to sit there, eat a turkey sandwich, and watch Scarface like 50 fucking times every day, but I don't got that kind of time.
Garrett, do you have Scarface-shaped thoughts?
It's a movie. I mean, I don't like. I'm not crazy about it, but like, also, I don't know that I like don't like it.
Fair.
Do you guys like the
it's
Untouchables?
Like potato chips, just like.
Do you guys like the Untouchables?
Love it.
Yeah.
Ba-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. That fucking score rules. I bought that recently on Vudu for like $5. For me, I really enjoy that movie. For me, it's always a little off. There's a little thing that's like, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's like there's just something
holds it back.
Yeah, it holds it back a little bit. But there's so many great moments, and there's a James Bond in it, so we're keeping it on brand.
Yes.
Spoilers for the Untouchables, just in case.
Which got him the Academy Award.
Yes. When Connery gets fucking lit the fuck up and dies, I was in. This actually works for the Bond podcast. I was in full Sean Connery James Bond mode when I saw that movie, and so like Sean Connery is my fucking hero. Like when I was watching that movie, I was like, he's the greatest, James Bond. There'll never be a better James Bond. I was like fucking like 9, and I was like, oh, Sean Connery's the best Bond
forever.
Yeah. And then I saw him get fucking destroyed in the Untouchables, and that shit. I don't think I watched the movie for like a month. I was just like, yeah. That's a long time for me, man. It's like dog years.
You're just in mourning. You just subsisted off of like
it's not that
boiled eggs and seltzer water.
Yeah, it's not that he just.
Dare I say that you thought he was untouchable when you were watching that movie?
I just wrote "touchable" on the wall and toothpaste every night on my bathroom. But like I was so devastated because like it wasn't that he just died. He gets fucking obliterated, and then he's just like, "What are you prepared to do?" And he's just like, it's so freaking over the top and insane.
Yeah.
It fucked me up.
It's a
and it still does. Like, and it's not even the death now. It's when I'm watching it again, and you can telegraph it. You know it's coming.
Yeah.
Even when you didn't know it's coming, it's filmed that way. Where like never bring a knife to a gunfight or whatever.
Yeah.
So it says something like
Typical WAP always brings a knife to a gunfight.
We saw that in theaters, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, a couple
for
years
the
ago
25th anniversary.
Yeah.
Which is
It's
now like
still fucked me up.
yeah, fucks us all.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning the score.
When did that come out?
87.
87.
Ah, okay. So he was doing that when Dalton was hanging out of planes.
Yes. Yeah. He was. Yeah. That was. Yeah, I guess Timothy Dalton. Yeah, was Living Daylight same year.
Wait, so 4 years after Never Say Never Again, he had morphed into old Sean Connery.
And,
like he
and
had,
then 2 years later, he morphs into Dr. Henry Jones Sr.
and then becomes Sean Connery that we know forever and ever. With yeah, interesting.
Shit, less than 4 years. He was old Sean Connery in Highlander.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he got in like super shape for Never Say Never Again. He's like, you guys remember me fat? I ain't fat no more. That's basically like what happened.
I hope he said that in the mirror every time he put the tux on.
Yeah. I'll show.
Remember me when I was a fat ass?
I'll show him. I'll show them all.
I'll show them all. Kick him right in the fucking arse. They're like, Mr. Connery, you ready? He's like, fuck you.
I'm going to win an Academy Award before this decade's done.
Yeah.
You fuck.
Yeah. I'm going to get obliterated on screen and fuck up a little kid's mind.
But you were mentioning the score earlier.
Dun. I love the score in The Untouchables, man.
Of course, yeah. It's a I always like the theme and outro theme to License to Kill.
Yeah.
Gladys Knight, License to Kill with the gold finger horns.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've had.
It's all right.
You had umbrage with the enunciation.
Well, I remember, I always remember being Licensed to Kill, and then I watched it again, and it doesn't sound like that at all at any point during the entire thing, and I was like, okay, I can fuck that up. Fair enough. But I still like Living Daylights better as a song. But it's fine. I mean, it is a classic formula for a Bond theme, and it's well done.
Yeah, for the most unclassic.
I'm not really
Bond.
a fan.
Yeah,
really,
it's fine.
Is it too easy listening for you?
It might be, yeah. I mean, it's not quite. I don't know. Like, I like the Bond themes that tend to be more like
bombastic,
over the top and like orchestral and shit. Like,
I wish that because this movie was like ultra violent,
Tom Jones fucking passing out in the Bond theme.
I wish since they were going like late 80s fucking up the cartels and going nuts, if they were like, hey Metallica, you want to do the James Bond theme? And it's just like, that'd be fucking because they released Injustice for All at this time, and they're just like, yeah, here's Blackened, and
and the score is done by Robert Kamen.
Yeah, or Michael Kamen, who worked with them later on S&M. Yeah, rest in peace. Remember in the Untouchables,
the first one where it's not scored by John. The last one was
done.
The last John, and his excuse here was like, I've got to get my appendix removed, and they're like, okay, and he's like, and I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, and I'm never coming back. No, but remember in the Untouchables, real quick, when Sean Connery shows up after Kevin Costner fucked up with the Umbrella Factory, and he appears out of nowhere, and it's just this fucking genius beat cop. I like that scene when he just shows up and he's just blowing his mind.
Yeah. Steps out of the fog.
He's out of the fog like a fucking phantom.
There endeth the lesson.
Yeah. You survive the first rule of law enforcement. Go home alive.
Yeah.
Which I will not do towards the end of this film. Actually, he dies in his house, so he didn't break the rule.
Yeah, he keeps his own rules.
Yeah. He's just like,
I think actually the best Connery moment in that whole movie is when he's beating up the dead guy. Oh, what's the matter? You can't talk with a gun in your mouth.
Also, when he fucking
I talk. What you want to know?
They put one of yours in the hospital. You put two of theirs in the morgue.
That's the Chicago way. And then he they go into that fucking it's so ridiculous because they're they'll get their photo taken, grab shotguns, and they're all in the fucking thing, and that one guy walks in, he's like, the swirly guy, he's like, hey, I think we should get him on tax evasion, and they're like, you want to be an untouchable? And he's like, yeah, here's a shotgun, we're going over to the fucking factory, we're going to fuck shit up. And they're like, where you guys going? Don't worry about it. And they kick the door open, they're like, the untouchables, and they just start, and they he grabs a shotgun and knees the guy in the balls, and he fires off a round, he's like, you're all fucked, and it's within 10 minutes. Crazy.
So this is now Untouchable from Chicago with Love, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a podcast about the Untouchables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hope you can stand that for the next 8 episodes.
Yeah.
There's that podcast Star Wars by the Minute where they break down a minute of Star Wars every episode, just 60 seconds of Star Wars every episode. The Untouchables by the Minute.
Oh, what would the podcast be?
Not great.
No. What would the name of the podcast be?
Untouchables by the Minute.
No, it'd be something better, like
Touchable.
the Podcastables. The Podcastables. Oh, that would suck. Oh, the Podcastables.
The
like Fisher Price podcast.
we are baby's first podcast here. That's what we do.
Ooh, the last track on the Untouchable soundtrack is called Machine Gun Lullaby. That's fucking metal. Hush, little baby, don't say a
The what do you think of Pam Bovier?
Great.
Great.
Yeah, she's a great
What do you think of what?
Bond girl.
The Bond girls.
Oh,
Which one?
Well, you have a choice. You have a choice of two.
You do. There are two.
Yeah. I always thought the American poster for this movie fucking sucks.
Dalton doesn't have the best posters.
His British posters are great.
License to Kill doesn't really have.
The British poster is great. The American poster with the cellist gun woman is not great.
Yeah, there's one for the license revoked that was pretty cool with the original title.
Yeah. The there's part of me that's like, this is a good film. It's just maybe not a good James Bond movie, and I think that's like the Garrett argument with like the Daniel Craig films.
Well, it seems to me that this movie really kind of fell into the, I don't want to say the 80s trap because there's a lot of entertaining stuff that comes from it, but like, it feels like there's a lot of, what the hell's the name of that TV show that was made a movie by Michael Mann? Miami Vice to it. Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of stuff that kind of comes from that, like that you kind of see in this movie. Maybe what is it, Hawaii 5-0? Was that the name of a show too?
Yeah.
I know that they did a remake of it with Scott Conn on CBS, but I never saw the original when I was a kid. I'd only ever seen reruns as I was older, so I couldn't necessarily, talk to it from seeing it in the time from when it was shot. But it seems like there's a lot of, aspects of that were kind of pumped into this film. It kind of has that flavor a little bit, as opposed to the traditional James Bond flavor. I think also that part of, to kind of piggyback on what you were saying earlier, of how these movies have aged well now that Daniel Craig has come along, these movies at the time were, and we've said this in every single episode I think we've recorded, received poorly by the public, namely because it wasn't the James Bond that they had come to know and come to appreciate and come to, understand, and you could bring your kids to the films and things of that nature. And then they took such a long break in between this and GoldenEye, and GoldenEye kind of found a balance between, the violence and the humor. So like when you have to kind of and you kind of have to, by nature, compare this film to that film, and that was so much better received for a variety of reasons that weren't even just named there. That I think that kind of also hurt the Dalton legacy,
Yeah.
Because even though Pierce Brosnan never made a movie that even came close to being as great as GoldenEye, whenever somebody remembers Pierce Brosnan, they're always thinking about him jumping off the dam or in the tank, and kind of reinvigorating Bond. Whereas I don't feel that Dalton really ever gets that kind of credit, even though he was a much different Bond in much different movies compared to the way that Roger Moore left the franchise.
Yeah.
I'm totally on board. I can totally see the idea that this is far from the conventional James Bond movie, and I think, I could just speculate only, but like, I feel like Dalton is totally fine with how his Bond is. You know what I mean? Like, he's got those two movies, and it's funny, like when he was his birthday a little while ago, and everybody was like on Twitter and stuff were like the best fucking James Bond, like, you know, and then like even in I Love You Man is I think where I got the name T-Dalt from, because when Paul Rudd's trying on the tuxedos and he's like, be like James Bond, and he can't figure out a pose, and I think they might mention another Bond, and he's like, I don't know how to do it, and he's like trying to be like Sean Connery and all whatever, and then he's like, be like Timothy Dalton, and he's like, oh, T-Dalt, and he fucking rocks rocks the pose, because, and I feel like little things like that, you know, like and you know, when Christopher Nolan, you know, mentioned how much he loves Automatic Secret Service, you know, I think it brought that movie to the forefront a lot more. So like, yeah, there's like, it's cool seeing like stuff like that, like even like in a funny movie like I Love You Man, like T-Dalt, you know, being recognized, and it's something like, you know, I think with every Bond movie, it's cool when people kind of discover the Dalton era, because yeah, I mean, you're only in 2 movies out of what, 24 at this point. You know,
he burns bright, but he burns quickly.
Yeah, definitely, and it almost is. You know, of course, I wish there was more Bond movies, and I'm always bummed when, you know, he jumps into the pool at the end, because you know that's the end.
Yeah,
and the fish man,
yeah, the weird blinking fish,
you know, blinks at you. But you know, it's a bummer, because I would have loved
all set to
it.
Patti LaBelle's "If You Asked Me To," which is like low key. I think one of my favorite lyrically. One of my favorite love songs of all time.
Oh shit!
I know. Yeah, here we are talking like fucking. The Untouchable soundtrack.
Dun-dun-dun.
If you ask me to, that's a fantastic. I don't know if it necessarily fits a James Bond movie, but it's like that's a good song, and it was covered by Celine Dion. Yeah, you know, we haven't mentioned the dude popping like a fucking balloon yet.
Oh yeah, well, I mean,
oh yeah,
in the ultraviolet. Well, in terms of people who for some psycho reason haven't watched the movie and decided to listen to this rambling all over the place about the movie. In terms of like the ultra-violent stuff and like talking about how I still think this is the most violent James Bond movie ever made, a man's heart is cut out. Off screen, but it's implied that the man's heart is cut out. A woman is shot in her wedding dress to death. A man is fed to a shark. Another man is eaten by a shark. A man's head pops like a balloon, and you see that in all its rubber glory.
Benicio del Toro goes through that chipper.
Benicio del Toro becomes human cocaine. Yeah. A man is stabbed by a forklift. And a man is lit on fire and then explodes.
Yeah, through a wall.
Yeah, through a wall, yeah. Does that cover it?
Yeah, well, you know, and I always watch the TV edit of this for the longest time, so where the camera cuts away right before Anthony Zerbe's head pops.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't see the bloody stump of Felix's leg in the TV cut. Yeah. And when Bond lights Sanchez on fire, you see him get lit, but you don't see him stumble into
stumble around running, screaming.
Yeah. He just kind of goes right into the fuel truck, and then it just blows up.
And you know, like, Bond has been waiting for that whole moment. Like, when all the shit goes down with, like, Felix.
That lighter is one hell of a Chekhov's gun.
Yeah. Also, I'm pretty sure that wasn't supposed to happen, how fucking huge the flame is. It looks like a total whoopsie daisy moment in the movie, which is fun. But you can tell that, like, yeah, when all the shit hits the fan, Bond's like probably like driving, and he's just like, I'm gonna light him on fire with this fucking lighter. He's like, it's gonna be fucking awesome. And then at the end of the movie, he's like, it all came together and it was sweet. Also, he does get a nice little quip in it. At their Ernest Hemingway.
At the Hemingway house,
yeah. And he goes, it's farewell to arms.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which, if you didn't know that was the Hemingway house, you'd just be like, okay, he's just...
I think they do say it.
I think he passes a sign for it.
There's a sign for it.
This is actually one of my more favorite, I don't want to say quotable, but a lot of the lines that come out of just a lot of the different characters' mouths, I thought were actually delivered real well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even to kind of transition to the villain, who I thought Sanchez was a fantastic villain.
Oh, yeah,
I thought
he's
he was
great.
a breath of fresh air. You know, it was nice for a change to not have a guy that wants to blow up the whole fucking world.
Mm-hmm. And he could have played it, to your point, he could have played it as a Miami Vice villain, but he didn't.
Yes, no, absolutely. When Bond's about to become Bond cocaine, and he said, when you're down to your ankles, you'll be begging to tell me. When you're up to your knees, you're going to kiss my ass. That's one of my favorite lines of the whole movie.
Yeah. It's freaking awesome.
Does that mean, like, being caught in that grinding cocaine powder world that Bond is probably hooked on cocaine now?
Oh, they're all fucking high as shit. I guarantee you what actually happened in the end of that movie is they're all just lying on the floor going, yeah! And then, like, MI6 showed up, and they're like, oh, let's get him out of here. And, like, he never actually got in a car. He never fucking had a thing go on a wheelie. The end of that movie is a fever dream. Like, Sanchez is arrested. Bond gets put into, a fucking quarantine center. No one's driving a fucking truck and exploding shit. They're just all high on cocaine because it's flying everywhere, all over the place. Yeah, they're fucked.
Like
the other thing about this movie that I didn't really appreciate until I watched it again is this really brought the whole Bond goes rogue to the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which basically happens every other Daniel Craig film now.
Well, I mean, you see it kind of happen. I mean, you don't see it happen in GoldenEye, but you can see M's displeasure with Bond, in the beginning of that movie.
Yeah. He goes rogue and die another day.
He goes rogue and die another day. Obviously goes rogue in Casino to an extent, goes rogue in Quantum.
Quantum is so much like License to Kill the more I watch it, like in terms of like the basic idea. And I know we'll get into that when we get there, but like I love that shit. I love it. And like I like that I like when Bond is like, I'm going to use this job. Like, I'm going to use this job, taught me how to kill, gave me the tools, and I'm going to go do what I got to do. And, it doesn't always go well, but it's always fun to see Bond do that.
Yeah. But yeah, Rich, to that point, yeah, that it does because, again, Roger Moore loves his job. Sean Connery loves his job. Lazenby almost quits at a certain point. Well, the actor literally quits, but like his Bond almost quits in a heated moment in that film. But that's for the most part, he loves his job. Daniel Craig, his Bond never loves his job. He's always either off the grid or bucking the system in some way. I think the most revolutionary thing is if, like, the 25th Bond movie, he was just like, oh, I'll do exactly what you want me to. We're good.
He's like, yeah, no, that sounds great.
Yeah. Cool.
He gets to the airport early.
Yeah.
He's like reading a magazine. He's like, no, I'm good. Just make sure I packed everything right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good.
No
drinking, please. I need to keep a steady head.
Yeah.
Steady hand.
Yeah. On the job.
Yeah.
I'm on the job.
Yep.
On the clock.
I'm on the clock.
Yeah.
What if it's called On the Clock?
Yeah. Daniel Craig as Ian Fleming's James Bond.
007 in On the Clock.
On the clock.
And it's like the clock is ticking, and it's like it's a real time movie.
Oh, like Out of Time with Johnny Depp.
Surely, yes. I never saw that movie.
It's not good. It's not good.
I'm hoping to, as we're wrapping up the 80s here in the Dalton era. Remember how like fucking 7 episodes ago I was like, I'm gonna read all the James Bond novels, and then I stopped because I fucking wore myself out after reading 3, and then I read like 2, 3 of the graphic novels. I'm slowly getting back into it, so I'm hoping by next episode I can do a little debrief on Diamonds Are Forever, the novel. And for Bond fans who are interested in the Dynamite comic stuff, which has been freaking great, the hardcover collection of Kill Chain just came out today at the time of recording this on Wednesday, and the beautiful hardcover graphic novel adaptation of the novel of Casino Royale just came out as well, which is really cool for Bond fans to check out. And the cool thing about the hardcover of the collections is they're kind of like movies. You don't have to like read basically them in order necessarily. You know what I mean? They're just Bond adventures in 6 issues. So I think there's also a Felix Leiter one that came out in hardcover
by friend of the show James Robinson.
That's right. I believe Andy Diggle is the guy behind Kill Chain
and Hammerhead.
And I really enjoyed Hammerhead a lot. That might be my favorite of the 3 that I've read so far. I have not finished Black Box yet.
Yeah, which is the last one. Or no, that's Benjamin Piercy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in terms of literary Bond and comic Bond, that's stuff to check out.
So yes. So we've kind of we've danced around like the car stuff. I mean, the big fucking rigs. What is your favorite thing, and what is your? I mean, I guess all of our least favorite thing is Wayne Newton. Sorry, Wayne Newton.
Sorry, yeah, we'll get that out of the way.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, for least favorite, it has to be aside from Wayne Newton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aside
from Wayne Newton.
So I'll agree on that. So your second least favorite thing.
Okay.
I I think it's weird that
maybe
Bond...
even your third, because you could probably find like 2 specific Wayne Newton things that suck.
I
So
mean-
like, you have to go like 3 or 5.
Vegas Vacation.
Bond fucking up the entire undercover operation.
Well, even more than that, like, yes, that's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing that he does. But just the idea of James Bond in Latin America in the late 80s and he fights ninjas.
Yeah.
That just kind of is weird.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one, Sam.
Fights ninjas in the 80s. Like, let's be real. Like, you find like there's a random fucking Australian action movie that like a dude walks up and he just turns into a ninja.
Is that the one that I showed you?
80s. It happened.
That's the one that
Yeah,
I
it
showed you, isn't it? Ninja Assassin.
It's like 2 dudes in business suits, and one of them is like, "Hey, surprise, I'm a ninja." Like, that's the 80s.
Yeah. No, I introduced you to that film, Ninja Silent Assassin.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fucking bad.
It's horrendous.
Bond fighting the ninjas in Latin America. Like, when you take yourself out of it being a Bond movie, and like if you were to just see that and then be told that was a James Bond movie, for any It's Always Sunny fans out there, that would be something that I would feel like the gang would put in one of their like Lethal Weapon movies that they tried to make in one of their episodes. That to me is what sticks out.
Jake, is it spoiling the operation for you?
I mean, yeah, when you really think about it, like when I first watched it, you're just like, oh, Bond's in peril, but then you're like, oh, wait, shit. I mean, I really like the cold open. We talked about that. I know it's kind of a cheap answer, but I just like, I love Dalton's performance just overall. Like, he easily could have played out of control the whole movie.
But he's in control.
Yeah, but he doesn't let himself play like out of control. You know what I mean? Like, there's little moments, like I said, when he takes revenge on Sharky, and you know, he does get harsh and kind of nasty, but you know, him playing all the different roles and having people turn on each other, and I don't know, it's tough. Like to take away the car chase, that's a classic. I like when he's like jet skiing with the fucking spear gun. And then
that scene was awesome from the underneath the water all the way up onto the plane.
From the moment,
awesome.
From the moment he shoots Sharky's killer, and then he goes underwater, and then he's jet skiing, and then he uses. I love when he uses the big wad of cash as a fucking shield
as a prop.
Yeah, as a shield, and then beats the guy with it. And it's one of the few times you see him like really smile.
When he laughs about that.
Yeah.
Like, when he looks at the money and throws it and starts laughing, I like that too.
Yeah, it's great. And it's also too, like, you know, all the Bond movies, like, I love when they make you earn the Bond theme, and you know, that scene definitely you earn the James Bond theme in that moment. Also in the moment when with the car chase at the end, you definitely earn the fucking Bond theme in that. There's some just really great action scenes, and overall, just in Dalton's 2 films, really great stunt work. You know.
Yeah.
I would say to piggyback on Jake on your comment about Dalton's overall performance. Mm-hmm. This is one of those Bond movies where you kind of see him run and portray like the full gamut of emotions that one could have in these movies, like, because like with Bond, like, you know, sometimes he cares about the female lead, sometimes he doesn't really care, sometimes you see him get super like angry to the point where you think he might lose control. You know, throughout the Roger Moore era, you never really see that, and if you do, it's not necessarily believable because he's just always so suave and so cool. But like, you literally see just a full range of emotions that are believable, I think, because Timothy Dalton's just such a great actor throughout this film, which, you know, for me, like, outside of the Wayne Newton, it's really hard to be kind of taken out of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when you look back at, we always talk about like what takes you out of the movie. There's there's nothing that James Bond does in this movie that really takes me out of it and makes me go, oh, like, this is stupid, or oh yeah, this is clearly Hollywood, or something of that nature. Like, it's very much, I mean, it's as grounded, I think, as an '80s movie can be, with, you know, the influence from Miami Vice or Hawaii Five-0 or all those other components.
It moves at a nice clip too.
Yeah, it definitely moves.
It doesn't drag really.
It keeps moving.
Yeah.
Especially for a 2 hour and 20-minute movie, 2 hour and 15-minute movie.
Also, John Glenn's last film. Yeah, exactly. It moves pretty quick. It's also John Glenn's last. He directs every Bond film in the '80s, so this is his last one.
I also heard this was his favorite.
Yeah, It's his best, I would argue. Well, it's between this and For Your Eyes Only.
Yeah, For Your Eyes Only is pretty good too.
Yeah,
but and it's funny because they're both both in terms of.
We've already put that one to bed. No, it's fine. You can admit
I mean,
it's
you know how I feel. I mean, I'm going License to Kill away, but
my favorite line in this film, very early on, where like Felix's wife is like kissing James Bond all the fucking time, and the first time she's just cut the wedding cake or whatever, and she asked James to come over, and he's just like, "I'll do anything for a woman with a knife." I like to quote that to women holding knives.
I always joke. My lasting legacy is that I always joke if I ever got married, we're wearing the fucking suits that they wear in the beginning of this movie, and we're taking a helicopter ride
with the top hats.
With the top hats, of course.
Harness. Like you're gonna walk down the aisle with a parachute dragging behind you.
Yeah,
and like they're like, what the fuck? And like they're like elbowing each other. One of like Sam's in there. He's like, his favorite James Bond movie is License to Kill. And they're like, what does that do with parachutes?
Sitting there like, oh my god.
Yeah. Gladys Knight plays,
and the Untouchable theme starts playing.
Yeah.
Dun 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 dun. Mr. and Mrs. Jake Bozick. Dun 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 dun. Yeah, good movie.
My favorite part of that is when they bust up the stuff at the border with the Mounties.
Oh yeah,
that's my favorite thing.
That's
yeah,
good shit.
It's a winner. Also, very young. My grandfather's name is George Stone.
Oh yeah,
Andy Garcia, Giuseppe Petri, George Stone.
Nice.
That's your little.
Didn't we have dinner with one of the guys from the stairway scene?
Duncan Rouleau.
Yeah.
Who plays one of the sailors in the stairway scene from The Untouchables. I always feel bad for those sailors because they're like back on leave and they're like, "Hey man, we're back in Chicago," and they get like annihilated.
Yeah. And like I said, that scene in particular is fucking one of the greatest just scenes in movie history. Just ridiculous how good that scene is. From a non-James Bond film. This has been the Podcastables.
So, any closing thoughts on Bond films? Because this really closes out. This closes out the classic run. What?
Yeah, I mean, I've got my best and worst. I think. Which, I gotta disagree with Jake. I think it's like one of my favorite moments in this is when Bond fucks up the raid, and like because the entire rest of the movie, like Dalton's angry, but like. It's not until everything goes fucking wrong that you realize exactly how pissed off he is. Like, this is a guy who, for an entire series, like, you have Roger Moore fucking holding the gun upside down with the wrong hand, like, underwater and shit, and still bullseyes the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Dalton is so pissed off that, like, not only does he not do what he needs to be doing, he gets a whole bunch of other people killed as well. Like, I think that's the one moment where it sinks in that, like, oh God, like, he really fucked up.
Yeah, which
like,
shows
this is,
and it doesn't even slow him down.
No, he's like, oh, okay. It shows how serious this world is.
And he's so fucking pissed off.
Yeah.
Worst moment outside of Wayne Newton. Kumbaba.
All those like Chinese businessmen that are like wined and dined around,
that cannot be like. That cannot be a word in a real language, right? Like, that just has to be a thing that, like, okay, like, this guy's talking to some people from another country, like, what's a word they might say? And, like, rather than going to fucking the library and pulling out, like, an English to Chinese dictionary or something, they're like, kumbaba, that sounds great.
Yeah. It's actually, or, like, they think it's, like, Japanese because apparently they think everything is Japanese when it's actually Chinese or whatever, and they're just like, it's konnichiwa, and he's like, kumbaba, and they're like, close enough.
Oh, Rich, another line I just remembered that's a classic from this, and he's like, when Sanchez is like, remember, you're only president for life.
Loyalty means much more to me than money.
Yeah. Oh, and then of course,
you want that money?
Yeah, when he's like,
fucking take it.
Yeah, he's like, you earned it, you keep it, and he throws the fucking money on the guy, and then Sharky's like, what a waste. He's like, of cash or money.
Yeah, because he glares at him right after he says, like, oh, money. Oh. Chainsaw.
Was this the last film Cubby was involved with?
He has a in-name producer credit on Goldeneye.
Yeah,
but he was in poor health during the production of it.
I heard the last official kind of passing thing he did was approve Pierce Brosnan.
Gotcha.
That was like his final thing.
Whereas with this film, his health is starting to decline. So Michael Wilson, his stepson, does a lot of the heavy lifting, and this is the first film where Barbara Broccoli is listed as, in this film, she's listed as like an associate producer, and then she becomes a full producer going into the 90s. So yeah, I mean, it's probably the last active Cubby Broccoli role in terms of a James Bond production.
Yeah,
because I mean, dude's been at this point, he's been doing it for over close to
27 years.
Yeah, close to 30. You know, and he was obviously not a young man when he started producing these movies. He had been trying to get them made since the 50s. So yeah, it's kind of It really is this film marks the end of the classic era.
Definitely.
Because for years they wouldn't license the Pierce Brosnan movies, at least when we were kids, because they were still so new that they were so expensive to license for those like Bond marathons during the holidays. So they're like, all right, well, you know, we've got 62 through 89. We've got, 13, 14, 16 Bond movies. That's good enough.
Yeah.
And as a kid, it was.
Happy Thanksgiving. Here's some cocaine.
There's still like very similar thematic notes, starting with Brosnan and moving into Daniel Craig. Like, it is very noticeably different. Like, even in the 6 years between License to Kill and GoldenEye, like even just the changes in the technology that they're using to film, like there's still that kind of
difference in film quality,
dated look to License to Kill.
Yes, absolutely.
Where like when you're watching it now, you're like, that's an old movie. Where like you watch GoldenEye and you're like, that's not that old of a movie.
Yeah, it's wild to me that GoldenEye is over 20 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many differences that do crop up where like when you watch GoldenEye, if you've been watching the series, you know, if you're crazy enough to be watching this series along with the podcast,
God knows we are.
That jump from this film to GoldenEye is jarring, and it's very noticeable that it's almost a different series in how it, like, even just the way that it's put together as a film. So yeah, I mean, this is really the end of an era. It's the last of the old James Bonds. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
James Bond is dead. Long live James Bond.
Yeah. Well, the next one, the Berlin Wall is coming down.
Berlin Wall comes down the same year that this movie comes out.
So,
albeit like months later.
Yeah, but I mean, they even mentioned it in GoldenEye about being a dinosaur relic, the Cold War. So yeah, it's a whole new
ball game.
Yeah, whole new ball game.
So I think on that note, unless you guys have any final thoughts before we put this one to bed.
No, fuck final thoughts. We're done. James Bond is dead. Long live James Bond.
Well, this has been another installment from Geek Out with Love. I'm Sam.
I'm Jake.
I'm Rich.
I'm Garrett.
Goodbye.
Goodbye,
James Bond.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.